Okay, so room supervisors and proctors should receive the spring 2020 ACT Test Administration Manual, and we're discussing in this purpose standard time testing. So this is standard time. We're not discussing in this case um, accommodation. So this is standard time. Accommodations, room supervisors, there's another video for that. But in this manual is very important. There are certain things that I'm just going to mention, and then you need to read the whole document. Room supervisors and proctors are responsible for reading this whole document. So your test coordinator went over this with you. It is still your responsibility to go through this and read what's in there. Um, you're still responsible for anything that happens during testing in that classroom. Any irregularities, you are still responsible for. So it's very important that you read this document and you know everything that's in there. If you have any questions, you talk to your test coordinator or you call accountability. All right, but there are a couple of things in here I just want to mention. The first one is this on page 19. So if you go to page 19, on page 19, they talk about handling materials on test day. So when you distribute materials on test day, when you distribute um, make sure you read all verbal instructions. So the verbal instructions must be read as is stated in there. Do not deviate from the verbal instructions. Now there is a place in there that talks about cell phones and electronic devices. So make sure you use whatever your test coordinator talked about in terms of cell phones, because ACT just tells the students to turn them off, whereas EBR policy is that it must not be in the room. So make sure you discuss with your test coordinator what the cell phone electronic device policy is in regards to EBR. It's the same as LEAP 2025 testing. Nothing has changed. Okay, so the answer documents, as answer documents are distributed, be sure each examinee receives the answer document with his or her name on the barcode, if there is a barcode, or the student coded gridded in block U. All right, so for example, you will receive some answer documents where there's a barcode. Make sure they get that answer document that belongs to them with their name on the barcode. Or um, if there's no barcode, then there will be a gridded student code in block U. So just make sure that the test coordinator does have that gridded if there is no barcode. So always check for that. Answer documents will have a barcode. If there's no barcode, then block U should be gridded. But do make sure that the student receives their own answer document. And that's very important. Okay, so let's talk about test booklets. So for test booklets, you personally hand one test booklet individually to each examinee in sequential serial number order. So when your test coordinator gave you the test booklets, they were in sequential order. Make sure that they stay in sequential order as you distribute the test booklets. So personally hand one test booklet individually to each examinee. Um, so the multiple choice test booklets are distributed when directed in verbal instructions. So when you go to the verbal instructions, and the verbal instructions are on page, so the verbal instructions begin on page 47. So if you go to page 47, this is where the verbal instructions start for standard time testing. So in advance, you need to have read this at least a week in advance, just so if you have any questions, you can ask the test coordinator, um, or you can call accountability. But you should always go to your test coordinator first. All right, so they talk about what to do before you begin. So before you begin reading the verbal instructions, make sure that you have the correct test booklets. So for standard time, it will be a triangle symbol on the cover. You have the correct test administration form. So make sure the test administration form that you're using looks like this. All right, so you had to, when the test coordinator gave you the serial numbers, you had to sign for this. So You already know what this looks like. So you can list the first serial number all the way to the last serial number that was given to you. So that's the books that you will distribute to the students individually. Okay, so then you have an irregularity report. So at the back of this manual, an irregularity could occur. Hopefully it will not. But if it does occur, on the back of this manual on page 63 is the irregularity report. All right, so that's the state district testing irregularity report. So if an irregularity occurs, immediately send the proctor. You should have a proctor in that room. Send the proctor to the test coordinator to determine how to complete this irregularity report, because you're going to have, as a test coordinator, as a room supervisor, you will have to complete this irregularity report. So the room supervisor will sign here, and the test coordinator will sign here as well. So this has to be completed between you and the test coordinator. Okay, so then let's talk about we're still on page 47, reading the verbal instructions. To ensure standardized conditions, room supervisors must read the verbal instructions loudly, clearly, and exactly as written. Do not deviate for anything in there. This ensures all examinees receive consistent, accurate instructions. Read aloud only those instructions in the shaded boxes. So when you go to your manual, you'll see that some of these boxes are shaded. So you read exactly what you see. Now, for the cell phone policy and electronic device policy, you're going to deviate a little from that. But everything else, you read exactly as is. Do not read aloud text in parentheses. So, for example, so let's see if I can find something in parentheses that's here. So this right here, for example, if anyone raises their hand, I mean, obviously you're not going to read this. Only read the shaded part. Now, when you begin, and we're on page 48, when you begin, this first part has a no writing and a writing. We don't do writing test in Louisiana. So we only do the no writing. So this is the part that you're going to read, and then you read everything else as you see it. Okay. So pause frequently and wait for examinees to finish the task before proceeding. Look at the examinees to be sure they are following instructions. Read the correct instructions for your test room and perform all tasks only when directed to do so. All right, but the verbal instructions do begin on page 48. All right, so in advance, you have to read all this in advance, so make sure you know what to do. Make notes in advance about certain things. Okay, now let's go back to this part here. So I'm back on page 19. So go back to page 19, and so we mentioned that the multiple choice textbooks are distributed and directed in the verbal instructions. All examinees seated in the room receive a multiple choice test booklet. The writing test booklets are distributed just prior to the. Okay, there's no writing test, so we're not even going to do that. Do not allow examinees to handle any booklet except their own. So you must individually hand examinees their own a test booklet. Do not distribute a whole stack and let each examinee pass it down. All right, so make sure you know what to do at the beginning of the test in terms of giving test booklets to students. Do not allow examinees to handle any booklet except their own. For example, do not allow booklets to be passed down rows or across aisles. Make sure each examinee receives only one booklet. Keep track of how you distribute it, and this will be important. Keep track of how you distribute the booklet so you can document the serial number given to each examinee on the seating diagram. So, as a room supervisor, you are responsible for completing this part of the room report. So you need to know how you distributed the booklets. So so once so if you have the students seated, so this is the first student, let's say, and this is the first booklet you gave them. You're going to put the during the first test, you're going to put the serial number here. All right, now if you did this correctly, if you put it in sequential order, then the next student should have the second book. The next student should have the second book, and so on. Okay, so the MC stands for multiple choice, the W stands for writing. We don't do writing, but you must put the serial number here. And then it's a good idea to put the student name here, just in case we have to go back and review certain things. All right, so multiple choice, this part is where you put the serial number. So keep track of how you distributed the booklets. Okay, so then they talk about security during administration. Guarantee the security test materials throughout the administration. On page 20, keep test materials in a secure location as examinees enter and exit the room. Account for all test booklets before testing, at break, and before dismissing the students. So there is a break between test 2 and 3. Never leave a test room unattended, even momentarily, even if examinees or materials are present. So never leave a room unattended. So hopefully your test coordinator provided you with a proctor as well. Ensure that each test room has sufficient staff for the number of examinees present. Actively monitor examinees throughout the administration. So do not sit at the desk for a huge majority of the time. You must actively monitor. Issues occur. Students will cheat if given the opportunity, so you must monitor. You must walk around checking answer documents, because one of the things you have to do, and that was in another video, one of the things you got to do is you've got to check to make sure that whatever number of items were left here, remember these will be an approximation, that students did not go back to work on previous tests. So things like that you got to check for. So pay close attention to cell phones and electronic device use. So it is possible that a student could have hidden somewhere a cell phone or some kind of electronic device. So you got to keep aware, pay attention, monitor, look for things like that. All right, now after testing, so remember this is standard time. So after the fourth test is done, and this is where some of the issues occur with the room report. So with the room report also, make sure that you individually collect and check answer documents. Confirm the certification as copied is copied. So on each booklet on the front page, there's going to be a place where the students are going to have to sign. Make sure that is signed. This is important. Make sure that's signed. Also confirm that the answer document is signed. Confirm the form code is gridded on the answer document. So one of the things you got to do is on that back part of the answer document, make sure that the student correctly coded the form code, correctly gridded the form code. So for example, on the answer document, now remember it's going to say ACT no writing. All students will have an answer document. So the form code that they're referring to is this right here. So right here. So just make sure that this is completed, okay? And then the booklet number needs to go here. All right. So just make sure that's filled out. And that whatever's here, the oval is complete as well. So there are a couple of things you got to check. On the test booklet, you have to check at the front to make sure the certification is checked. Before you dismiss students, go to this page and make sure that this is complete and this is complete. All right, this and this. If it's not complete, then that provides some issues for the test coordinator. So that's your responsibility as a room supervisor. It's your responsibility to make sure that this is completed. All right. Now, the other thing is that there should be, when you distribute the answer document, the barcode label should be here. So that's where you're going to check for the barcode label. If there's no barcode label, make sure that right here in block U, that there's the student ACT ID is listed here. It's not the LACID. This is not the LACID that goes here. It is the ACT student ID, but that should already be completed by the test coordinator. All right, so if for some reason there's no barcode and this is not completed, just make a note and tell your test coordinator that this needs to be completed for the student. All right, so again, this is not the LACID. It is a ACT test ID that needs to go here. And if there is a barcode, then this should not be completed. This is completed only if there is no barcode, but that is not your responsibility. That is the test coordinator's responsibility. Your responsibility is to make sure at the end that this is completed. All right. Also, there was a signature that needs to be completed on the front part. Just make sure the student has, so right here it says, do not place label here, use soft lead pencil. So the student will complete this part. So the label, and the test coordinator will already have this done. Right here we're putting the label. Just make sure that as you're giving directions for the students that they do things properly. Okay, so confirm the form code is gridded. All right, we just talked about that. Stack all answer documents so they face in the same direction. Verify the number of answer documents collected equal the number of examinees. So if there were 10 students taking the test, there should be 10 answer documents that you collect. All right, number 2, individually collect and check test booklets. Confirm the test booklet is signed. I don't have a test booklet, but at the front of the test booklet, there will be a place for the signature to make sure it's signed. It's something you got to remember to do. Verify the number of booklets collected equals the number distributed. So, for example, if on that room report, if the test coordinator gave you 10 booklets, you need to have 10 in your possession. Arrange the test booklets in sequential number order. All right, note, use your test room report to reconcile test booklet counts after the test. So what that means is this. So on this test room report, after the test, right here, you're going to indicate, remember we're doing multiple choice tests. So you indicate how many booklets were used. Now this is booklets right here. How many booklets were used, how many were unused. And then that number right here should equal this number. All right, so that's important before you leave the room. It's important, before the students leave the room, it's important that this equals this. If there is a discrepancy before dismissing students, you need to contact the test coordinator immediately. All right, so then, let's see. Okay, so also for the answer documents used only, this is only for use. You're going to indicate the number of answer documents we scored. If any were voided or if any were replaced, that you're going to discuss with your test coordinator what to do there. All right, but this right here between you and your test coordinator, just make sure that this is completed. Okay, once examinees are dismissed. Okay, and also, okay, here we go. Place the collected test materials where examinees do not have access. Once examinees are dismissed, review your set of test administration forms and check that all pages are completed. So in another video, just make sure you go to that other video. It talks about what you have to do as a room supervisor. What you have to do as a room supervisor. So you have a hand in playing in this page right here, the roster page. You have a hand in this part here. You have a hand in this part here as a room supervisor, and you have a hand in this part here also as a room supervisor. All right, and then once you've checked everything, so if you use any additional forms or regulated reports, ensure that these forms are completed, and then return all materials to the test coordinator after testing. So after testing, you can return all test materials, answer documents. You're going to return test booklets, and then you and the test coordinator will complete this form together. The test coordinator will check to make sure that you've done all the parts that you were supposed to have done. Okay, so that takes care of that part. Now, the other thing I want to look at is the sequence. So let's go to page 33. Page 33. All right, so on page 33, the sequence of the test. Okay, now for standard time and for accommodations, but we are talking about standard time here, the test must be administered in the order listed. Do not deviate from this. The test 1, the first test you give the students is English. The second test you give the students is math. Then there's a break. There's a break between those two tests. Then the third test is reading, and the fourth test is science. We don't do writing. All right, so we're not going to discuss start and late start because that was determined by your test coordinator, the start time. Now, time allowed for each test. Each test has a set time allowance based on the timing guidelines it is being administered under. The time specified in the verbal instructions for each test must be followed exactly as stated. So if I go to page 50, so let's go to page 50. All right, on page 50, where we start talking about the English test. Remember, test 1 is English. They even tell you test 1. They tell you test 2. So they already told you the sequence that needs to be done here. But if you go to test 1, on this part here, it in the shaded parts that you have to read, it even lets you know that students have 45 minutes to take test 1. Okay, so English, the English test is 45 minutes. The math test, if you continue on, the math test, now they're different times. So the math test is, let's see if I can find it now. So the math test is 60 minutes right here. Math test is 60 minutes. Then you have a break. And the break is usually at most 15 minutes, but your test coordinator will discuss that with you. The break should not be more than 15 minutes. Then there's test 3. And test 3, which is reading, is 35 minutes. And then test 4, which is science, is also 35 minutes. Okay? All right, so that's the timing of the test. So remember, the order matters, the sequence of the test matters, and the time matters. So make sure you are timing the test accurately. Okay, so again, it says each room supervisor is responsible for timing the test in his or her own room. All right, so let's go to this part. So your room supervisor will provide you with timepieces. You cannot use your cell phone. No cell phone. No electronic device. And then they talk about accurately timing the test. So let's discuss that. As you time each test, enter the actual start time on the timing report. So if I go back to the room report right here, and if I go to this page where they talk about the timing report. So if you started at 8:52, then you put 8:52 right here. All right, so it says as you begin timing each test, enter the actual start time on the timing report. Calculate the stop time. So remember, the English test is has a different timing than the other test. The English test, remember, is 45 minutes. So if you just be a little bit careful, because some of you may be doing the accommodations as well. So just make sure you're using the correct time. So the English test is 45 minutes. So just keep that in mind. So make a note somewhere that this is 45 minutes. All right, so if you start at 8:52 and you want to determine what the stop time should be, okay, what you have to. Once you put this, then you put this. So if you start at 8:52, here's how you read this. This is for test 1 right here. So you start at 8:52, so you look for 52 right here. So look for 52. If 52 is here, so that you're going to put an 8 here, which means that 45 minutes later would be 9:37. So that's where they get this 9:37. And then you just subtract 5 minutes to get the time that you're going to inform the students when there are 5 minutes remaining. Okay, so that's how you do this. So they tell you the duration right here. So the standard time is easy to indicate. So for example, test 3. Let's suppose you start test 3. I'm making this up. Let's say at 9:51. I made this up. So you look for test 3. Now make sure you go to the right one. So here's the one for test 3 and 4 right here. So you start at 9:51. Make sure you're using the right one. This is the one you need to use. See, this part here is for test 1. This is what you're going to use for test 2. This is what you can use for test 3 and 4. Test 3 and 4 have the same time limits, 35 minutes each. So if you start, let's say, 9:51, then you locate 51 here. So 51's right here, so 9:51, which means that you're going to end the test at 10:26. So you're going to put 10:26 here, a.m., and then subtract 5 minutes, so that way you will know when to inform the students that there are 5 minutes remaining. Okay, so when you subtract 5 minutes, you get 10:21. Okay, all right, so that takes care of that little part. Before you announce 5 minutes remaining, and before you call stop, check your timepiece carefully against the time you have written down, and verify it with other timepiece. If your proctor's in the room, hopefully there will be, the proctor's to double check the room supervisor's timing. Make sure you record the actual time you made your announcements on the timing report. Note, you may post the start and stop times or the time allowed for each test on the board if one is available. Verify your calculations before writing the time on the board. Okay, announcing time remaining. A verbal announcement, so in the directions, a verbal announcement of the time remaining must be made 5 minutes before the end of each test. So it's in the verbal instructions. It is important to give the time remaining announcement accurately, as examiners rely on it to pace themselves. All right, so just as we've discussed, there is a break. There is a break after test 2. And it's no more than 15 minutes. All right, now this is important. Make sure security and noise precautions are taken during the break. All test booklets must be closed with the answer document inside them before the break begins. If examinees remain in the room, collect the materials or otherwise ensure that examinees do not tamper with them. Do not leave test room unattended at any time. Be attentive to examinees trying to access cell phones or electronic devices. Dismiss any examinee who violate the cell phone and electronic device policy. Designate a break area away from test rooms or assign staff to control noise if some rooms are still testing while others are on break. Resume testing after the break according to your room schedule. Do not delay testing waiting for examinees who are late. Okay, so if you have any examinees who come in late after the break, do not wait for them. Examinees who return late may be readmitted, but lost time cannot be made up. So if a student comes 5 minutes after the third test begins, then they cannot make up that 5 minutes. Keep conversation with examinees who return late to a minimum to limit the distraction to those already testing. All right, now remember, this is important. The lunch students can only have lunch after the fourth test. So they cannot have lunch during the break. You can provide with a snack, but the snack must be consumed outside the classroom. But no lunch, no lunch. So the lunch, they can only go to the lunchroom, they can only go to the cafeteria, they can only eat their lunch after the fourth test. Okay, we don't do writing. I'm going to skip that. All right, so it takes care of that part. Okay, so the other thing I want to talk about is administering the test, and that's on page 36. On page 36 of the standard time manual. So they talk about allowed and prohibitive items in a test room. So remember, we discussed cell phones, so make sure you know what the cell phone policy is that you need to tell the students. You need to be monitoring the classroom, so the students could hide these cell phones. Students could hide electronic devices. So make sure you're constantly monitoring. You must monitor constantly. That's why it's a good idea to have a proctor in the room. So there's a poster. There's a poster that was provided to the test coordinators. That poster should be posted outside the classroom and inside as well. Okay, so now this is a little part I need to remind you. See where it says notes? So that's why it's important that you have a discussion with your test coordinator. This is what it says in the book. Do not collect cell phones or other electronic devices from examinees. Examinees should retain responsibility for them. Okay, that is not EBR policy. So this is not true. There should not be any cell phones in that classroom. They need to leave them in their locker, leave them in their car, leave them at home, whatever they need to do. It cannot be inside the classroom, the testing room. Now, some schools have a policy in terms of how they collect them. So that's a discussion between you and the test coordinator. Now, staff should not use cell phones either. So just make sure as a room supervisor, as a proctor, you do not have any cell phone in the classroom. If it goes off, there is going to be an investigation between the room supervisor, you, the school, and HR. So and accountability. So make sure that you do not have a cell phone in the room. Students talk. If they see that you have a cell phone, it will get to the test coordinator. The test coordinator will have to report it. Okay, calculators. Make sure that the students are using a correct calculator for the math test. So there are prohibitive calculators. So just make sure you check for that. During the math test, though, now most schools, let me just say this, most schools will provide students with their own calculator, with a school calculator. But if students bring their own, just make sure you as a room supervisor have to make sure it is a calculator that's approved by ACT. So test coordinators were given the list of approved calculators. So you just need to look at that calculator policy. They also were provided a calculator policy for that. So let me just show you what that calculator policy looks like. So the calculator policy looks like this. So the test coordinators have this. It should be provided to students at some point. Not each student gets one, but maybe posted around the school so students can know what the calculator policy is. But that's a calculator policy. You should make sure you see this in advance. So they talk about what examinees are responsible for, what testing staff is responsible for, and then these types of calculators are prohibited. So you have your TI models. These TI models are prohibited. These Hewlett-Packard are prohibited, and these Casios are prohibited. And they talk about some other prohibited calculators. So they talk about the types of calculators that are permitted. So make sure you understand all that. Okay. All right. Then the other thing I wanted to mention right now is this. So that's the poster that, well, it's not really a poster, but it's just a sheet of paper that talks about the no cell phone policy. Okay. So calculators. Now right here, they talk about staff responsibility. So you need to check for prohibited calculators during the math test. Check periodically to make sure examinees do not switch calculators after you go around checking. If examinees use a prohibited calculator, dismiss the examinee for prohibitive behavior. If a calculator has characters 1 inch or higher or raised display, seat the examinee where no others can see the display. All right, examinee timepieces. So examinees may have a personal timepiece, such as a watch, a timer, or a stopwatch, provided it is not on the desk. No cell phone, though, no electronic device, just a regular watch, a regular timer, a regular stopwatch, provided it's not on the desk. Also, it is not a distraction to others, and it is a prohibited device, smartwatches and all that. It cannot be, remember, this is not allowed. So if it's just a regular watch, regular timer, then we're fine. Okay, now other items. Examinees may not bring any of the following to the test room: textbooks, foreign language or other dictionaries, scratch paper, notes, or other aids. None of this is allowed. Highlighters are not allowed. Colored pens or pencils are not allowed. Correction fluid, tape are not allowed. Reading material is not allowed. Reading material is not allowed. No fiction books. If they're when they finish before everybody else, they just sit there. Tobacco of any form. All right. Examinees and staff may bring snacks and beverages into the test room, but may only consume them outside the room during break. So that's the idea of that snacks. So if there are certain snacks the examinees like, then they can consume it during the break. Okay, so there are certain general announcements you're going to make to examinees. Obviously, the cell phone. Remember, EBR has a different cell phone policy. Calculators, you can talk about calculators during the instructions. Now, hats, if at all possible, have students remove their hats, but there are some individuals for religious purposes that require some kind of hat. So just be aware of that. Okay, restroom. Okay, so let's look at monitoring the test room. So again, you must be physically present in the room at all times, even during the break. Monitor, so that's why it's important to have a proctor in there. Monitoring through glass partitions or security cameras is not allowed. The examinees cannot be left unattended even briefly. The room supervisor must be in the room for the entire session, except when relieved by the proctor for a short break. Only one room supervisor can supervise multiple rooms at the same time. One room supervisor cannot supervise multiple rooms at the same time. So you're in your own room. We've never had this issue, so I wouldn't worry about that. You're only going to have one room to deal with. Okay, so note, a room supervisor is a person responsible for administering the test in one test room. A test coordinator who supervises a test room is the room supervisor for that room. So this is really in smaller schools. All right, checking for prohibited behavior. Throughout testing, remember, students are humans just like we are. Throughout testing, move quietly around the room to discourage and detect prohibited behavior. The more you move around, the less likely you're going to have to deal with irregularities, with cheating, with any prohibited behavior. Document all prohibited behavior and any action you take on the irregularity report. You do not want to get to that point, so make sure you're constantly monitoring. If you suspect an examinee but are uncertain, warn the examinee of the behavior and ask ACT for a decision before the examinee is dismissed. If the behavior continues after one warning, promptly dismiss the examinee. If you dismiss an examinee for prohibited behavior, follow the instructions exactly on page 44 and dismiss for prohibited behavior on page 45. All right, but again, you need to have the discussion with the test coordinator. Okay, so talk about answering questions. You may answer questions for examinees about the mechanics of the test, but must not answer questions by guessing or content. Always refer to examinees to directions in their test booklets. Do not comment on or add in any way to the test directions. Allowing examinees to leave the test room. Examinees may go to the restroom during testing, but it is best not to announce them. Remember, if they go to testing, they're losing time. Secure, if they go to the restroom, secure examinees' test materials anytime they leave. Always be sure the same examinee returns after leaving. If you have doubts, recheck identification. Only one examinee may leave the test room at a time, just one. If two or more examinees need to leave at the same time, or if other rooms have been dismissed, the examinees must be accompanied by a proctor. Do not leave a test room unsupervised at any time. Okay, so that takes care of that part. Okay, so the other thing I just want you to be aware of is we kept talking about irregularities. So it's important that you understand the difference between a group irregularity and individual irregularities. So this is going to be a different video. So we're done with this part of the video.